East Lancashire has become familiar with textile mill closures. Each one has its own story. Barrow Ford is a large village near Nelson, dating from the days of the handloom weavers. Water powered the first industrialised textile mills, later replaced by steam, with huge weaving sheds.
Well, the East Lancashire Towel Company was originated in 1932. Father took the business over in 1957. The 8 looms he had in Burnley, he moved here to Barrow Ford. At that particular time they had 8 Lancashire looms and they were making single width cloth, so very low production. He actually increased the number to 16 at that particular stage and managed to keep up with orders. Early 1970s he decided to re-equip with Northrop fully automatic shuttle looms. Now these had the advantage over the Lancashire looms in that they were wider and could produce multiple cloths side by side. But the looms didn't stop either. They had their own weft supply actually being wound at the loom, and so one shuttle effectively could weave in the loom all day without stopping, whereas the Lancashire loom had 2 shuttles, one in the loom and one spare, and when the weft ran out in the original shuttle the loom had to be stopped, the shuttles changed and carry on again, so that did cut down on production. But by the end of the 1980s we realised that manufacturing towels in high production for low profit margins wasn't really where we wanted to be. So in 1987 we decided to install jacquard machines above the Northrop shuttle looms, and we put 2 on in Christmas of 1987, and early in 1988 got these 2 looms going. By the end of 1992 we had 6 jacquard machines, all producing relatively small quantities of towels but at quite a high profit margin, and this is what helped the company survive for the next 15 years up to the present date. This mess is made from regenerated rag and fibre sweepings from the spinning room floor, just short pieces of fibre that wouldn't be long enough to spin into good quality yarns. So this ends up making quite a cheap towel for industrial use. This is a roller towel that you would probably find in workplaces and schools and things like that, or behind the kitchen door possibly. It's a continuous piece of towel that goes round on a wooden roller, which we can also supply. And then you would move on to the jacquard towels, and patterns created by weaving green for the background, and where the design's needed we bring the gold thread up to the surface using the jacquard machine. But the reason we need a folded yarn for this one, 2 fine yarns folded together, gives a very firm, rigid, upstanding loop. And when you're trying to create letters and fine detail of the crown, as you can see there, you need a loop that will stay put, not one that's going to flop all over the place. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to see what you were trying to produce there. A couple of specialist towels that we make here. This one's made using bamboo fibre for the loops, regular cotton backing, and woven into what we call a crepe weave. And then linen for the loops, quite harsh and abrasive, and cotton for the backing, ground warp and weft. If you like a rough towel that helps with exfoliation of the skin and promotes good blood circulation, this is the one for you really. Quite a nice design, this one with the eagle stood on the football. This is a beach towel that hopefully the fans would take with them on holiday and show their allegiance to the football club whilst they're sunning themselves on the beach.
Ear protectors are essential. Bought-in yarn is rewound onto smaller cones suitable for the jobs in hand. These are then put onto creels, from which they can be wound onto beams in the length required. Preparation of a new beam for a completely new run of cloth is an exacting process requiring patience and care. The process being done here is called leasing. Some 1,600 threads are individually handled. In the old days, bringing a new beam of warp and fitting it to the loom was a job for a strong man. Now, hydraulic devices make the task easier and much larger beams can be handled. Knotting in a new beam, joining it to the end of the last run of material, is another process requiring attention to detail and taking at least half an hour. But this will eventually make 1,000 bar towels. The ends of the threads from the previous beam have been prepared earlier.
When I started work, left school at the age of 16, there were over 20 mills producing towels in Lancashire alone. I think one of the reasons why we found it difficult to compete with the foreign competition is that at that particular time, that not only were they being subsidised, but it was cheaper to buy a made-up towel from, let's say, Portugal or Turkey. It was cheaper to buy a made-up towel than it was to buy the equivalent weight in cotton and have it dyed. So we're onto a loser straight away. If you can buy a ready-made towel cheaper than the raw materials, then it's very difficult. And that's what really started the decline for us. Well, once we've knotted in the new warp with the Juster knotting machine, depending on the amount of yarn we put on the beam, this can be as little as 2 days weaving or as much as 2 weeks weaving, depending on what length we put on the beam. For some of the short runs of souvenir towels, where we're asked to make 500 bar towels, this will weave in 2 days.
Other looms are set up to make a variety of different patterns. With a well-equipped workshop, running repairs can be made on site. The finishing department is comparative peace and quiet after the noise of the shed. And in the shop, customers can see the whole range of towels. Apparently a thriving business. Yet here we are in October 2009, seeing Peter preparing the last beam, tying in warp for the last time, and 3 weeks later weaving the last towels to be produced in Barrow Ford. Following a decade of adverse trading conditions, the prospect of continuing a profitable business was looking doubtful. With the staff fast approaching retirement age, the plan was to wind up the business before running at a loss. When an offer was made for the site in 2004, the decision was made, although the deal was not confirmed until April 2009. Peter had until the end of that year to weave up and empty the building. Not only the end of towel weaving in Barrow Ford, but in the whole of the United Kingdom.
Okay, that's it. I'm finished.